Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hook Turn podcast. This week it's just me, Vivek, and Sambib. Adash is unfortunately away, but we do have a few exciting topics to talk about. So, firstly, we're going to kick off by chatting about Lamborghini's new Temerario, which is their supercar that replaces the Huracan. Secondly, we have a car challenge. So, we've been looking at car sales and we've both picked our choices for under $5,000 on what we would buy. And these choices are something a little bit different, a little bit exciting. So let's have a look at what we actually pick. And then finally, we have a big announcement from Kia, which is the launch of the 2025 Kia Tasman, which is their Toyota Hilux and Ford Ranger rival. So let's get stuck into it. But firstly, Sambib, how are you going?
I'm going good. Looking forward to talking about the topics we've got today.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So let's get stuck into our first topic, which is the all new Lamborghini Temerario. So this is their supercar that's replacing the Huracan. It sits below the Revoluto, and it now has, rather than the V10, the naturally aspirated high revving V10, it now has a plug-in hybrid, which pairs a 3.4 kilowatt hour battery and three electric motors, so two in the front, one integrated with the gearbox, along with a V8 hybrid. And even though it's a plug-in hybrid, the V8 aspect of the car can still rev to 10,000 RPM, which is quite impressive. So, especially given that it's a twin turbo engine. We also have a revised interior with more technology, better audio systems, 6 miles, so that's approximately 10 kilometers or just under 10 kilometers of EV only range. And it has that torque fill option as well, so gives you that instant torque and instant power from right from 0 kilometers an hour. And the pricing starts at a stratospheric 614,000 before on-road costs, which is more than a Ferrari 296 GTV and even almost $155,000 more than the Huracan. So, Sambi, what are your initial thoughts on this car?
So ultimately, the Huracan, it's been around for a while. I still remember it debuting in about 2013, 2014. It looked absolutely amazing then, especially coming from the Gallardo, which was the previous entry level, so to speak, at Lamborghini. While the Gallardo looks mostly modern, but still slightly dated, I think the Huracan has aged amazingly well, and especially with the additional updates and the new variants of the Huracan with the Huracan Evo and the Huracan Storado as well, the off-road version. It's basically kept quite modern. But obviously, especially as emissions regulations changes and customer expectations changes, it was probably necessary for Lamborghini to do an upgrade.
Mm.
And so obviously they brought that here with this car. Ultimately, similar to what the Ferrari has done with the 296, they had to, even, thankfully, not make it full EV, but had to obviously incorporate some electric elements. So similar to the 296 to not to the same extent because the 296 has a much greater EV only range than certainly the Temerario does. But still, the idea goes that they use the electric propulsion to combine with the V8 engine to basically make it as quick as it possibly can be. Yes, obviously, the idea that goes that it's not the same as the V10, but the reality is that naturally aspirated V10 and V12 engines without any kind of electrification isn't really going to fly, especially with European cars. So it was pretty much inevitable, basically, that they'd have to do it. Otherwise, though, it seems like this car is doing what it needs to do, which is keeping up, making the car more modern while still keeping the classic Lamborghini styling. Entry level in massive quotation marks, an entry level for a for a thing customer for a new Lamborghini customer is still pretty amazing, but yeah, and it seems like inside it's significantly more updated in terms of its infotainment and other electronics, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, it seems like you're and apparently really they basically the Temerario very much closely matches the Reveldo, which is a fantastic thing because that's obviously a significantly more expensive car. a modern day digital instrument cluster, which obviously can be customized depending on what the driver wants. Then you've got the additional screen that controls a lot of the basic car functions. And on top of that, you've got other tech, such as the fact that it's got apparently three 4K cameras that can capture who the occupants are, the front of the vehicle, and how it looks like behind the seats, and you can record it at any time, which is pretty amazing as well. So again, it's basically taking what the Huracan already did well, which was an amazing driver's car that went really fast, and then updating it for our modern reality. I will say though, while the front of the car, the design looks pretty amazing, I will say the rear of the Temerario, I still reckon the Huracan looks cleaner and more aggressive. Obviously, this is just the first generation, similar with the Huracan. They're probably going to do more variants that will make it look even more aggressive, which possibly could change. But other than that, it seems like another incredible car for Lamborghini.
Yeah, I think the styling wise, it's definitely an evolution. It doesn't go like we all know Lamborghinis are known for their sort of crazy aggressive wedge shape styling. And this is another sort of evolution on that. It's it has that long sort of front, like aggressively downward sloping front bonnet, like everything you sort of expect. And I think from a broader perspective, the good thing with Lamborghini is that they can borrow all of the technology and expertise and whatever they need from the broader Volkswagen group. And that shows in things like the technology offering, like with all of those infotainment systems, even the powertrain. Like, yes, it is Lamborghini and it is like a sort of unique offering, but they have like the engineering expertise that they can bring from the broader Volkswagen group. And that shows in things like, you still have this insanely high revving V8 hybrid, which is, customers in this segment of the market, they still want that sort of oral experience, and they want that feeling of combustion engine. So yes, you have to comply with those emissions regulations, and going forward, I'm sure that pretty sure that every sort of future Lamborghini will have some sort of electrification. Like I don't see a future where there'll be a pure, unless it's in extremely limited quantities or an extremely niche, like special edition model, that you'll have a purely natural, like combustion engine Lamborghini. So this is sort of like the best of this marriage is sort of like the best of both worlds. Like, yes, you have that electric assistance. Like, yes, it's only a token, like 10 kilometers. Maybe if you're just going down to the local shops and you want to do it quietly and late at night, you can rely on that hybrid aspect of that powertrain. But then you have that emotion and all the theatrics that come from that combustion engine powertrain. So I think they've done a good job there. The technology seems bang up to date, and as Sammy was saying, with the dash cams and that what is it called, the Lamborghini Visual Unit, or whatever they're calling it, Lamborghini Vision Unit. That seems very interesting, because take it on the track, you can record your track laps and all of that stuff. I think it'll do well for its intended market, people who want to show off, people who want to have that attention-grabbing car. And I think that's maybe where Lamborghini differentiates itself from Ferrari a little bit. Like, yes, they're both Italian brands. I think Ferrari is more focused on a little bit more on the heritage and the history and the brand cachet and all of the motorsports, pedigree and so on, and the pure sort of track-oriented performance. Whereas Lamborghini is more like you want to show off a little bit. You want all of that technology. You want something a little bit more outlandish. You don't want a waiting list, and you go for a Lamborghini. So I think it'll cater well to that market. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. It seems like literally the only thing that apparently doesn't make as much noise compared to the Huracan, which, ultimately it's
yeah,
not something that's practical. I'm still sure that it probably makes more noise than most regular cars, which I think should
definitely.
do it for most
Yeah,
people. But yeah, other than that, it basically has done what it needs to for Lamborghini. And similar to the Huracan, this is just the beginning, right? The
yeah,
Huracan basically had a 10-year lifespan. It was launched in 2014 and basically had its last variant launched in 2024. So we're going to see variants of this car for the
yeah,
next probably decade, before the next successful successor. So this is basically just the beginning of this car.
yeah.
It's probably going to receive a facelift in another 5 years, and in between those, there's going to be who knows how many variants
There's, I'm
on
sure
offer.
I'm sure there's going to be like a track-oriented variant, and then there'll be like a super veloce variant, and then
Yeah.
maybe there'll be like another off-road, slightly off-road focused Sterato equivalent, and so on. So yeah, interesting. All right, shall we move on to our next topic?
Yep.
So this is something that we had a lot of fun thinking about. So our favorite cars under $5,000. So we had a $5,000 limit. We didn't have any limit on kilometers or body style or age or anything. It was just what would we pick? What would we spend our hard-earned $5,000 on if we wanted something a little bit different? So maybe not the usual, like, old Toyota or old Mazda or so on. Something that's just a tad different and something that would get maybe a little bit of attention. So, Sambit, what was your pick?
So ultimately, for under $5,000, your options are extremely limited. Usually in this segment, actually, the more reliable brands, so to speak, as Toyota and other Japanese brands are often actually more expensive because people basically know that, sellers basically know that you're going to pay a higher price to get that slight comfort of reliability. Ultimately, for under 5K, if you want something fun, yes, there are some options, but they're often extremely high kilometers and probably are going to cost you more in repairs than whatever money you save by spending under $5,000 on the car. In saying that, though, there are some decent options. Um, Before we get to my pick, having a look at some other options. You can get some decent luxury cars from, say, the BMW 3 Series, even the 5 Series, Mercedes C-Class, Audi A4, etc., from the late 90s to early 2000s, where, yes, the tech will be completely outdated, but fundamentally, the luxury features such as the seats, etc., and some other futuristic tech for the time would still be okay. Only problem is as I said, with cars of that vintage, you would have to pay so much in terms of repairs that I don't necessarily know if it'd be worth it just for the badge. So those are some things. If you wanted something more unique, I did see some, relatively speaking, some newer cars, 2008 to 2011 from some of the French brands like Peugeot and Citroën, because obviously no one really buys those pre-owned, so those drop in value even more. So again, you can get some decent cars in that price range. But the one that caught my eye was something that I'm familiar with primarily from video games, specifically from the video game Midnight Club 3, where the Chrysler 300C, the original '05 one, was basically the cover car. So it's a car that I'm quite familiar with, and I saw one on Carsales that's done 185,000 kilometers, which is quite a lot for a American car, but for $5,000 exactly. So the only reason it's $5,000 is seemingly because it's got some light cosmetic damage that you probably need to spend $1,000 more so to repair. But otherwise, you've got a very distinctive car that, unlike even most brand new cars, would absolutely catch the attention of people on the road. So it's still relatively, or not new, but not that old, 2005, so 20 years old. By that point, we still had some reasonable safety technology. Got a pretty decent engine, not the V8 obviously, but still the V6 option is in this car, which is basically not too bad, I would say. The idea here goes that you'd have a car that is very distinct on the road. Pretty much everyone you drive past will look at you and be like, "Oh wow, who's driving that car?" It's even got some classic thing features like a sunroof, obviously full leather seats, even a wood grain trim steering wheel. So it's got some decent thing. Apparently, it had service relatively recently, which I guess is helpful. But yeah, that's probably the car I'd get. Well, I don't know if I'd get the car, but it depends on the context of the situation. But if I hypothetically had no other criteria other than just get the coolest car I can for $5,000, I don't see how you could beat this car.
Yeah.
It's super practical, obviously. It's super spacious, and yeah, it's as attention grabbing as you can be.
I remember when the police used to drive around with
Yeah,
Chrysler 300s. That
yeah, the
was
second generation one, I remember. Yeah,
Yeah, that was funny.
yeah.
It's definitely like I can see this car being a massive fuel guzzler. Like that's so you'd probably have to spend, I think any money you'd saved from from the upfront purchase price probably offset by the huge fuel cost.
Yep, agreed,
The huge,
agreed.
huge. And I think those, is it just me or are those headlights a bit fogged up or a bit,
Probably, yes.
yeah,
I would imagine. I can't imagine that these guys, yes, they engineered it in such a way that it would be lasting this long. But yeah,
yeah. Yeah, this is a American luxury which has a lot of chrome, but not a lot of substance, unfortunately. But it is very big. And you definitely get some looks. It might be a bit hard to park in the city, but yeah, definitely an interesting choice. Definitely something that will get the attention of others. So my choice was something a little bit left field, and I went with this car because I thought, look, $5,000. You want something a bit unique, and this is from a brand that no longer exists, or at least it doesn't exist in its current form. And I was thinking, want something a little bit, which has a little bit of safety, but also is relatively unique. So I went with a Saab 9.3. This is a 2008 model, and it is the turbo. It's done 224,000 kilometers, so that's quite a few kilometers. It is an automatic. It's a 2-liter turbo that has just under 150 kilowatts of power. Has leather seats. This one has like lamb's wool car covers and otherwise a beige interior. And for me, and this is my sort of old man's opinion coming out, I really like beige interiors. I'm not a fan of black interiors; they're just too dark, in my opinion. So if there's a choice of a beige interior, I will definitely go for that. But yeah, you don't really see Saabs around these days. And I thought, $5,000, it's something that might not stand out to the average person, but if you're in the know with cars, you're like, oh, hey, this person's got a Saab. That's quite a unique option. So I would probably actually for $5,000, I would maybe take a gamble on this car. It seems like it's well maintained from the description. It has a service history, so
it
um,
has a service
it has
history.
a service history, service per book, no rust. It has air conditioning. It has Bluetooth. It has which is good, so you can have your Bluetooth phone convo. I don't think it has Bluetooth audio though, so that might be a bit of an issue. You might have to stick to listening to the radio. And one of the interesting features that it does have, which is potentially was a lot less common at the time, it has rain sensing wipers. So
Oh wow.
that's something to to note. So yeah, interesting car. And this is of course using a GM powertrain, so it should be okay to get servicing and parts. But yeah, just something a little bit unique. So
Mm.
yeah.
And also, I think the exterior design has really held up.
Oh
It's
yeah.
actually quite a good looking car
It,
even today.
yeah.
Yeah, even the rear especially, I think it's quite good. Like ultimately people see a car from the rear
Yeah.
and yeah, it's still a pretty good looking car.
It
Your
definitely, yeah.
yeah.
It
Uh,
definitely looks like a modern car. Like it doesn't look like super out of date. Like if you got this like, detailed and everything, like it would look pretty sort of, bang up to scratch. And I've always liked sort of Saab's, design philosophy. Like they're very like, the older models they had that huge ducktail spoiler. And I still remember when the last 9.5 came out. I think it was in 2011 and it was only on sale for like maybe a year or 2 years. It had a very like very clean like, not I'm not sure if Bauhaus would be the right way to describe it, but very sort of clean, like clean design, very like sort of timeless, not too much chrome, very well proportioned. Yeah, I sort of really like their sort of very sort of aerodynamic, just smooth styling. So yeah.
yeah, no, it's a fantastic choice. But yeah, and it goes what I was saying earlier that in this price range, it's actually might not be the best idea to look at the traditional brands because those are often overpriced. Go for the more
Mm.
niche brands, and you could be surprised with what you get.
Yeah. Even like options like, okay, you have like a safer choice, like a Lexus, for example. Like we were having a look and I think I saw like was it like a Lexus IS 200 from like 2004 that you could
Mm.
get? That was done like, 330,000 kilometers. And sure, it's a Lexus, it would probably still hold up, but you want something maybe a little bit different. So yeah. Okay. Let's move on to our final topic, and this is probably the most important or slash significant news of the week, which is that pricing specifications and initial reviews have come out of the all new Kia Tasman. So this is Kia's Ute, and as we know, Utes are massively popular in Australia. Ford Ranger, Toyota Hilux, Isuzu D-Max, a Mitsubishi Triton, almost every big sort of car company worth their salt, except maybe Hyundai, perhaps, has a Ute in the market. So this is Kia's alternative. Um, we all know that this Ute has sort of been promoted through this insane marketing campaign over the last sort of 18 months where they've had every sports star under the sun. They've Ash Barty, they've had, who else have they had? They've had AFL stars, I think have they had David Warner at some point? I don't,
Yeah, they've had not even just sports stars. They've
yeah.
had I know Mike Whitney was there. They've had just classic Australian celebrities. Yeah,
Exactly. Like they've paid like through the roof for this insane teaser campaign,
yeah.
basically and it makes sense because Kia doesn't have much heritage with utes, and they want to sort of, so to speak, Australianize this car as much as possible. So I mean, it is a smart strategy. You have every like famous Australian celebrity under the sun try and promote this car and have this extended teaser campaign, but. Just sort of in relation to the specifications, so you have your 4x2 and 4x4 variants, which is necessary. Well, only one powertrain option, a 2.2 liter turbo diesel four-cylinder with 154 kilowatts of power and 440 newton meters of torque. So that's actually interesting, and maybe we'll touch on that in terms of how that compares to the Ranger and the Hilux specifically. It does come with that critical 3.5 ton brake towing capacity, which is crucial in this segment, especially when you have other options that have that exact same towing capacity. Seems to have all of the modern interior features. You have that twin 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster. You have you have a range of off-road driving modes. You have all of the technology with the 360 camera, all of the safety features. But I think maybe the most controversial aspect, and it has been since we got the first sort of teaser images, has been the styling. So, Sammy, what are your sort of initial thoughts, not just on the styling, but on the broader car itself?
I think actually it's got one of the best interiors of the segment. Yes, apparently it might not be as flashy as something still like the Ranger with massive portrait screen, but Kia's interiors in general are pretty amazing. And it seems like it's carried over with the Tasman. I certainly feel like it seems like in the very upper trims, X Pro, etc.,
Mm,
that it doesn't even feel like Ute inside. It feels like a full, quite a premium car.
mm,
And the other great thing is that even the base model gets the twin 12.3-inch display. So even if you get the absolute cheapest model, you aren't losing on the technology features, which is pretty amazing. So ultimately, and the inside of the car, I think, would be a great place to be seated. On top of that, your it does come with the reassurance that Kia is a very established brand compared to some of its other competitors, such as the new Chinese brands in BYD and GWM. It's got still physical buttons, which also might appeal to many people. So you can change the temperature, etc., with physical buttons.
mm,
So it's not like everything's on the touch screen, etc. Apparently, it's got all the spacious parts that truck and new drivers sort of need. And still, the top grade stuff has pretty amazing luxury features as well. So yeah, it seems like, and apparently the powertrain is, while underpowered compared to some of its competitors, still reasonable, for the segment. Um, so ultimately, it seems like they've also, given how much engineering and testing they've done in Australia, they've really tried to make sure that it's focused towards our market. In terms of the exterior styling, I'd actually say the rear looks pretty decent. Not that it looks incredible, but if I seeing the Kia Tasman from the rear, and I have seen it in person as well driving to work, it looks perfectly fine from the rear. Not anything that stands out in any amazing way, but certainly not ugly. The front look, yes, it's something that doesn't maybe look traditional,
mm,
and I wouldn't call it ugly, but I would say that it's certainly not
Ooh, that's a big
amazing to
claim.
look
Not
at.
calling it ugly.
But I would also say that if you stick a bull bar or something on it, I think it would look perfectly fine, honestly.
Mm,
And the reality is that for most people, even for other cars, like if you're not driving the car, you mostly see a car from the rear.
mm,
And for the driver, you literally only see the car from the inside. So I don't necessarily really think that that the car, how it looks is really going to matter in the end because not many people actually see the front of the car all the time. And it's kind of irrelevant anyway. So yeah, yes, obviously having a nice looking car helps, but ultimately the Hilux I don't think is an amazing looking car either, and that
mm,
hasn't stopped it from selling incredibly well. So you're yeah. Other than that, I would actually say that it would be between this and something like the Shark that if I ever hypothetically was in this segment, I'd be looking at. But this car, I'd say it looks like the interior is pretty damn amazing. Yes, a lot of the photos that Kia has released are of the tops trim rather than of the
mm.
base SX model or the S is the
Yes.
base model,
Yeah.
but I have to imagine the vast majority of people on this, if they're buying in bulk, would at least opt for the SX model.
Mm. X
You know,
line, SX plus. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So even then, I'm sure it'll be decent. So yeah, I don't necessarily think that uh, it will be it's a good choice within the segment, it seems. Yes, and especially given how pricey things like the Ranger is, I feel like you could and the Hilux is so outdated at this point. It's
Mm.
kind of yeah pointless. So yeah, this is a pretty yeah good option.
It's definitely interesting. I think the styling, like the front, it's maybe growing on me a little bit, but like it definitely just looks like a rhino. Like I like has that huge front, like sort of bulls type, like bonnet shape and the wide grille and everything. I think Kia's design direction was this car had to stand out, and they've definitely achieved that. I do agree that the interior is probably, in terms of its rival, it's probably this pick of the segment, to be honest. Like I think it is most likely the nicest interior you can get in a ute. Um, especially with these sorts of utes. Like I'm not including like those big American utes like the F-150 and the Tundra and the GMC, was it the Yukon and the Denali that are more sort of like on the luxury end of the market, but at least for in terms of this sort of like standard Aussie sort of mid-size ute, so to speak, it's definitely the nicest interior that you can get. Uh, I think what is interesting is that this car ultimately, like, will be sold on the strength of its brand and the strength of the reputation it gets. Like, it will take like Hilux and Ranger, they've been around for a while now. Hilux in particular is known, like Toyota has marketed the Hilux for so many decades on it being unbreakable and having that reliability. So Kia, and I think the fact that Kia have done a lot of engineering and testing work in Australia means that they're confident that this car will be reliable. So that's a really, really good step forward in the right direction. I am surprised that given we have NVES now and we have emissions regulations, that they've only come out firstly with one diesel powertrain, and even then a powertrain that is slightly smaller than competitors. So Hilux, you have a 2.8 liter diesel. I think Ranger, you have a twin turbo 2 liter diesel, and then you have a 3 liter option, V6 option available as well. Um, they haven't come out with a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. That's quite surprising. I think Kia believe that they have their existing lineup of electric vehicles. So they have the EV3, EV5, EV6, and they can sort of offset from a whole of brand perspective any crazy sort of emissions or emissions debits that are incurred by sales of the Tasman. So I guess from a strategic perspective, maybe in the short term, they can hold off a little bit on having a plug-in hybrid. But I do think in the future they'll need like a another powertrain, and that will need to be an electrified powertrain.
Yeah,
I
they've
am,
mentioned though, I think it's coming in 2027.
yeah, okay.
Uh, an electric
Mm.
electrified powertrain, but for the time being, it'll just be the diesel.
I can see. I mean, I think this will also depend on how the sales actually go with Kia. But I can see potentially if they wanted to expand the range upwards, they can introducing a performance model. So you have the Ranger Raptor, which has has some level of popularity now. Like it's known as this, all-round off-road performance car. It has that Baja mode, which is, and there's Fox shock absorbers, and it's supposed to go really fast on really rough terrain. I can see Kia trying to compete with that. Even Hilux now has like a GR Sport option, which is has that those pumped out wheel arches and like that wider body and everything. So I think it makes sense that they focus more on like their intended buy market with like commercial tradies and businesses, and then they have that family focus variant with the X Pro and the X line. But I can see potentially in the future, given that this car does well, a performance model also coming on stream. So, which will be
Yeah.
very interesting to see how they make this sort of design language into a more performance oriented version.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And also, what will be interesting is seeing the sales in VFAX over the next couple of months.
Mm,
At the beginning, it'll probably have a boost because of the pre-orders and people, early adopters. But in the long term, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Has their marketing campaign paid off, or are people turned off by the styling and plus the fact that it's not a fully established brand like Ford with their Ranger or Toyota with their HiLux. So yeah, we'll be curious to see. But I have no doubt we're going to see more and more ads of this car. There's going to throw a lot of marketing at it,
yep.
and they have quite high aspirations. I think they said they want to sell about 20,000 units
Mm,
um, per year. So, and basically they want to be third after HiLux and Ranger, ideally.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's it's interesting because like I like the name Tasman. I
Mm,
think it's quite an evocative name. It's very
mm,
Australian. It's better than like I think what will be actually interesting is in terms of overall sales. Like you have Mazda, which is sort of semi-established as the number two brand in
mm.
Australia behind Toyota. They have a Ute as well. They have the BT50, and yes, it is essentially a badge engineered Isuzu D-Max, but it is, like it has the Mazda Kodo design language, and it is slight position maybe slightly more upmarket compared to the D-Max. Do you think the Tasman will overtake the BT50 and potentially uh, overtake Mazda as a whole to make Kia the number two brand behind
I
Toyota?
think it'll certainly overtake the BT50, simply because Mazda doesn't actually market it that much. Isuzu does a much better job of marketing the equivalent D-Max. But whether this helps it overtake Mazda second, I'm not sure. Mazda's obviously got their own lineup change with the CX line coming online, even though it's not quite achieving the same market as the original CX-5 did.
Mm,
But I think the idea is the fact that they Kia now have a vehicle in this massive segment, so
mm,
it could possibly push them closer to Mazda, if not overtake them
yeah,
completely.
yeah. I think it will definitely put distance behind between them and Hyundai. Kia's already sort of overtaken Hyundai. Like they were last sort of I think 2023, 2024, they were pretty evenly matched. 20 was it 2024 when was the first time that Kia overtook
Yeah,
Hyundai? I'm
last
just
year.
interested to
Yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
the VFAX 2024 uh VFAX just out of curiosity. I think let's see the article top brands. Actually, no, Ford was number two, Mazda was third, and then Kia was fourth.
Yeah.
And then yeah,
That
Hyundai was even Mitsubishi did better than Hyundai. Okay. I think I mean if there's like this is based on 2024 annual sales. So I'm just having a look. There's a 15,000 car difference between Mazda and Kia. So if this Tasman meets its, I think their sales target is 20,000 units a year. They have a stretch target of 25,000 units a year. If the rest of their lineup continues to do as expected, and then Mazda was 2023 to 2024 year-on-year difference down 4%. I think if Mazda doesn't increase their sales and the Tasman does really well for Kia. I can see Kia overtaking. Yeah, I can see Kia overtaking Mazda. I can even see Kia overtaking Ford. If Ford is very dependent on the Ranger, if this starts taking
And
away
then
sales from the Ranger, I think it will be a very uh, number two, three, and four will be very, very contested in 2025, second half of 2025. I think. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it'll be curious to see the next 6 months how,
yeah,
or the next 5 months how the
yeah.
sales go for the Tasman. But yeah, interesting to see if there are more on the road. I've seen the BYD Shark 6, plenty of those on the road. So
Mm,
curious to see whether the Tasman can replicate it as a
yeah.
new entrant.
Especially as there's no plug-in hybrid variant for the Tasman. So
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, I think we might call it there. So, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Hook Turn podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, whatever platform we're on, all of them. So, and thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
see you later.
Bye.